Welcome to Rick Rack Ruby. I'm Laura Cluvo. Today we will be making a drawstring gift bag from 6 pre-cut 10-inch fabric squares. My fabric is from the Wildwood collection by Rifle Paper. It's fun and easy, so let's get started. We will make this gift bag from a set of 6 10-inch squares, or what's called a layer cake. This layer cake is from Rifle Paper Company, and the first thing I did was I cut out a 5-inch square from a contrasting fabric that has this little bunny on the front. It's really cute. So I'm going to zigzag around the edge, all 4 sides of this patch, so that the front of the bag will have a little focal point. Here we go. I have zigzagged around the edge. It might be hard to see, so I'll show you the back. It's just a simple zigzag around the edge of the green square. The green square is 5 inches and the background square is 10 inches. I've chosen this fabric as my lining and this fabric for the cuff. Now the idea is that after I sew this cuff on, when it folds down inside the bag, this will be sort of this border area will be at the top of the cuff, and I think that's going to be really pretty. So now I will sew this together. The front, the cuff, and then one of these lining pieces. And then I'll repeat for the second set. The front, the cuff here, and then the lining. I'll be right back. Here we go. 3 squares all sewn together, 2 sets. Now I'm going to press the seam allowances open and I'll be right back. Here we go. My seam allowances are pressed open and I'm going to line them up. This will be the front of the bag and this will be the back. So I'll line up the seam allowances, pin around the outside, and stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll leave an opening here. In the bottom of the lining, I'll leave an opening for turning. Before I sew, I want to show you how I matched up the seams. And every one of these is matched up. Now I'll sew these together. The next step is to box out the corners. So the first thing is to trim the seam allowances from the corners. Do not cut through the seam, but just those little seam allowances. And then I'm going to reach in from the bottom opening here. I left a nice wide opening big enough for my hand. And then I'll work all the way down inside to this corner and shape it out into a point and open up the seam allowance until it's flat on both sides. Put that seam allowance right in the middle, like this. And then pin. I like to pin both of those down. Get them nice and flat, and sometimes I even press this before I sew it. I'll go about 1 inch up, and I'm going to stitch straight across here like this, right across here. I'm just putting that pin to show you where I'm going to stitch, right here. There we go. And now I'm going to trim that corner, and that one's done. Now I'm going to get the opposite one to match. So again, I'm going to open up the seam allowances, pin them flat, and stitch up 1 inch. Pin it down with the seam in the center and stitch across. And of course I back stitched at the beginning and the end of the seam. And then I'll trim that off. In the same manner, I will box off the corners of the lining. Same way. Trim off the seam allowance at a point, trim off the little points. Open them up, center them. Keep them nice and flat like this. Pin and stitch up 1 inch across. So now I have all 4 of my corners boxed, and here's the fun part, turning it right side out. I have this image of the cuff that the border will run right across the top of the cuff. And I'm hoping that's the way it's going to work. There's the bunny on the front. There's the corners. And before I turn the lining in, I'm going to stitch up the opening. And I do this just by top stitching. It's nothing fancy. I'm just going to go like this, turn it to the side, and just stitch right along there with about 1/8 of an inch from the fold. Here's how I finish the opening. I call it top stitching. Then that'll be right in the center. So let's tuck this in to the bag. So this becomes the lining. I'm tucking it all the way in, and I'm reaching into the corners to make sure that the corners of the lining are corresponding to the corners of the outside of the bag. There we go. All right, now I'm going to press this, just the top edge, so that I have a nice crisp fold. This is going to be great. For the drawstring, I will use 1/16 inch ribbon. So the casing is going to be about 3/8 of an inch right from the fold. I'm going to stitch from the inside, so my presser foot will go right here, and I'll stitch a 3/8 of an inch casing. Here's the casing, right there along the top edge of the fold. And now I'm going to thread the ribbon through from the outside. This needle is a little sharp. I like to use a dull needle, but I don't have one right now. I'm just going to thread this through. Oh, I remembered a trick. Here we go. I can do it with the eye first. I'm going to start and end at either side of the side seam. So there's the side seam and the 2 ends of the ribbon, here and here. I like the ribbons to be the length of the bag. So I'll cut them off about right there. This is probably 1.5 yards. I think, so there's 1.5 yards of ribbon times 2, so 3 yards of ribbon. Now here's my second drawstring. I'm going to insert the needle into the casing and feed it all the way around. Going past the other seam. Keep going, don't let it get hung up in there. I'm pushing the eye of the needle right here so there's nothing really to poke forward. The pokey part is back here. Now I'm almost back around to where I started. And I want to come out just on the other side of the seam. And then pull it through. And again, I think it's about 1.5 yards of ribbon on each side. And then I'm tying it off in an overhand knot. And voila, we are done. Look how easy that was. I'm going to go and fill it with something fun, like I'm going to fill it to make it look pretty, but I think this is just the right size for a pair of shoes. This is really cute. Thank you for watching my video. If you're enjoying my tutorials, please like, share, and subscribe.